I see. The video, just remember that the video is. Come, let's go.
Hi, Celine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just in case.
It's about to start. So just get me that big laptop, please.
Yep.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, apologies. I'm having some trouble. Just the power went off now. I'm having to use my phone. Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Spillin.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Busy week.
Yeah. Just joined in right in time. Huh?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. So I think we should start at 6:30. That's like 1 minute from now.
I desperately need a haircut. I don't know how it is with you guys, but this lockdown here in Bulgaria,
so no barbers available. You can. I think you should.
Nah.
I think I'll start now. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today on this webinar. This is the second last of a series of 6 webinars planned by TIACA over the last 2 weeks, with the Air Cargo Forum 2020 going digital this time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have spoken about people for cargo, sustainability for cargo, airports for cargo, cargo for vaccines. And today we will touch upon a very important topic and a key entrant into the logistics sector, that is drones for cargo. I am Surya Kanod from the Stat Media Group, and the theme for today's session is Are drones ready to take off deliveries, big and small? Before we get started, a few housekeeping announcements. The audio has been muted for all the participants, apart from the speakers. This webinar is being streamed live on TIACA's YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please do type them in the Q&A tab down below, and we'll get them answered by our panelists. Moving on to the session. Until a few years ago, drones were just a figment of one's imagination. And we were continuing to hear theories of how drones will be the future of air cargo. And here we are now. Drones have finally arrived and are actually making deliveries, be it critical supplies or blood or pizzas or e-commerce deliveries, and probably the next most important product, the vaccines for COVID-19. For drone and UAV operators, the time now seems just right. With the pandemic and social distancing and travel curbs, drones and unmanned air freight has and will continue to be an important part of the logistics industry. TIACA has been a major advocate of sustainability, and drones and UAVs make an excellent proposition for emission-free and sustainable deliveries. To share with us more on TIACA's vision on unmanned air freight, I call upon Celine Urquhart, the Transition Director at TIACA. Celine, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Surya, and thank you to all of you who joined this session today. Drones and manned aviation is really close to my heart. It was the case in my previous job, in my previous company with IATA, and it's still the case now. I'd like to just start the discussion, but very quickly with some key input from me and from TIACA on how drones can really be the future of air cargo, or at least part of the future of air cargo. First of all, it all started as drones and are a threat to aviation. And I remember the first discussion I had when I was working for IATA, and the discussion I had around drones. The reaction from the safety specialists in IATA was really, hold on a minute, drones are really a threat to aviation, to aircraft, to safety. They realized, so it was like 5-6 years ago, and the conversation has changed little by little. And they realized that drones cannot be stopped and will continue flying and using the skies. So then the next step in the discussion was, okay, we have that threat that we need to manage, but we realize that we have some challenges to address to use the airspace and to integrate those vehicles into the airspace.
Celine, sorry to interrupt. Can you be a little more louder, because we've been getting messages that your voice is not too audible. Can you be a little more louder? Yeah.
I'll try. So after being considered as a threat to aviation, and then a challenge in terms of airspace integration, the conversation has evolved a bit into drones are opportunities to aviation. It's opportunities to open new routes. Let me just change my slides. To open new routes, create new businesses. So especially on the cargo sphere, in my view, the potential use cases that we can see with unmanned aviation are the traditional ones that we heard already, like covering the last mile to deliver small parcels, to support e-commerce, also to have emergency deliveries of specialized type of cargo, but still quite limited in terms of payload, and also specialized delivery for hard to reach locations. So it can be in the context of geographic specificities, natural disaster, conflict zones, etc. And then we can really also try to change a bit also the mindset of the traditional aviation professionals to see drones, bigger vehicles, and the next speakers will talk about that shortly, as opportunities to complement the existing fleet of traditional air transport providers, smaller vehicles, more agile, that do not require too much of an infrastructure, that are maybe cheaper to operate. So it's opportunities to open new routes, create new businesses, unlock economies, etc. And also those vehicles can also be a good way to have zero emission vehicles in some cases, not all, but that, and also to develop point-to-point routes, but with smaller hubs or smaller airports. In my view, unmanned aerial vehicles are going to contribute to airlines' profitability and to aviation's profitability, not just to airlines. So as I said, new routes, new customers, developing business, also expanding expertise. There is so much expertise in the traditional aviation community that can be transferred to the new entrants, to the drones players. And we can also learn from them and really benefit from close collaboration. It's, and I bet Svilen will touch base on that based on what I saw in the news. For me, drones are also a fantastic opportunities in terms of diversification of activities for small airports. Very important this year with the COVID pandemic that is hitting everybody in the aviation industry, including the airports, and the small airports are really suffering big time. Drones could become a good opportunity for them to survive and develop. A way also to compete with road transports. In air cargo, we are used to the road feeder services. So let's have also the drone feeder services complementing the airline journey. And again, achieving or contributing to achieve CO2 emissions reductions. At TIACA, we would like to welcome new entrants, all the cargo drone players. TIACA is the International Air Cargo Association, representing and uniting the air cargo industry, the entire air cargo industry, and not just the manned air cargo industry, also the female, but it's a separate joke. And as such, we'd like to really welcome drone manufacturers, drone operators, airships, any type of novel transport and companies and solutions like Hyperloop as well, etc. And I'm not going to continue any longer because I think what we need to hear now is from the experts, from Ed, from Svilen, Jeffrey, and Barry, how they can help us to transform air cargo. So the floor is yours.
Very interesting points highlighted there, Celine. Thank you for setting the tone for the discussion ahead. Joining me today on the panel are Barry Kopperberg, the founder and general manager of Wings for Aid, Jeffrey Niaga, the chief operations officer of Astral Aerial Solutions, Willin Rangelov, the co-founder and CEO of Dronamics, and Ed DeReyes, the chairman and CEO of Sabre Wing Aircraft Company. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Surya.
After listening to Salim's presentation, I would like to first, find your first thoughts on the current cargo ecosystem, cargo drone ecosystem, and the need for, integrating them into a multimodal logistics system. Ed, I'll go with you first.
Our design, we have an aircraft that can lift up to 2.4 tons of cargo vertically, and then 4.5 tons of cargo as a conventional aircraft. We purposely strive to keep to make sure that the aircraft is currently capable of flying. So we call it a plug-and-play solution, so to speak, into cargo operations. So it allows us then to not have to seek special permission to fly, special waivers to go from point to point, or even change the route. It's really designed to fly like any other cargo aircraft. The only difference with our aircraft really is the capability of delivering cargo now to any location on Earth, not just to locations that have an airstrip or even a small landing field. It's capable of landing in a very tight space and taking a lot of cargo there. So we see that in actuality, something that Celine had said previously, actually, I would say that you said previously about cargo drones in their introduction. Drones in general have been flying in the world airspace actually for more than 25 years. Granted, they're military drones, but they're still using civilian airspace to traverse and everything else. So it's a known commodity, it's a known quantity, and the regulatory agencies do know how to deal with them. They do know how these aircraft will be certificated and everything else. So we, based on that infrastructure, based on our knowledge, internal knowledge of how these drones have been able to use it, and really, quite frankly, a drone is kind of a mindless thing. A drone isn't really so much of the image, I think, that we want to show. Ours contains quite a bit of AI internally. It's designed to fly without a pilot on board, and so it's really more of an unmanned aerial vehicle. And more specific, it's an intelligent unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV. So we just happen to be able to carry cargo.
Right, an intelligent vehicle there. Jeffrey, could you give in your thoughts on the same?
Yes, thank you so much again and for this opportunity. Just an initial disclaimer is that I'm having connectivity issues. So in case I'm going in and out, apologies in advance. No so in my opinion, I think the drone industry is maturing on well and is on track to show itself and to prove itself as an important piece of the puzzle in the entire supply chain and the logistics network. And this, especially for me, looking at it from an African perspective, it comes at a great time when traditionally, most of the problems we had from lack of infrastructure to connectivity and ways in which we can open up trade in rural areas. And this coupled now with the issues of warehousing and lack thereof, especially in remote areas, I think the drone technology has really come at an opportune time. And now I also think being in the middle of a pandemic, some of these use cases have clearly come out. And I think we are on track to solve most of these problems, are not at a local scale, at a local level, but mostly at a regional, as well as solving majority of these use cases at scale. And I think for me, that's one of the most exciting things as to how the autonomous technology is coming to disrupt the traditional logistics industry.
Right, thanks, Jeffrey. Swilin, can I hear from you?
Yeah, so it's great to see so many familiar faces in the room, but I think in many ways, if we can compare that cargo drone industry to the passenger drone or the new urban mobility players. Over there, you have, here the panelists are pretty representative of a significant part of the players in the unmanned cargo space, but we would be a tiny percentage, the number that we have compared to the passenger vehicles that are being funded, started, and so on. I think we have the unique opportunity that everyone here, the cargo scenario is much easier to serve than the passenger scenario, especially with new vehicle types. Path to certification is easier. There's a lot of other operational facilitations that can be made when you don't have passengers. So it's really it's really an industry that I see rapidly developing in the next couple of years, and I'm very excited about that. I think everyone touched on it, but with COVID restrictions and so on, even people who aren't from the industry are now absolutely convinced that this is the future. We need to care about how we move the goods, not so much how we move the people along with the goods. So that's quite exciting.
Thanks. Exciting times ahead. Barry, can we hear from you?
Yes, of course, Surya. Thank you for organizing this. And I think with the previous speakers, it is exciting times. We are in from the humanitarian perspective. There are 100 million people served every year who can be reached normally even by means of airdrops. But 20 million people each year remain out of access. And for the sake of the debate, I think we have discussed the come of cargo drones. Celine mentioned it also. It was a matter of access and acceptance by the general public. And I concur that we are in an interesting time now, where both technology has matured a little bit, and at the same time, it is now or never for cargo drones to pave the way. I mean, first cargo, then passengers, that's clear. And from my perspective, humanitarian first. From a private point of view, I couldn't care less whether Amazon.com delivers my book within 24 hours instead of 3 days. But to reach people in need, it is really of societal value. And I think that the more societal value we create with our initial projects, and I already see in the chat people asking for the distribution of medicines and vaccines, of course, that's what we need to do. If we create societal value as an industry, that will bring us flight hours, it will bring acceptance at the general public, hence we can grow this fascinating industry. And indeed, turn aircraft into more intelligent machines. For the benefit of it all. We are also, I think, very happy with the hard work that has been done by the JARUS working group, the JARUS working group number 6. It is a fascinating time. I mean, 6 years ago, it was unthinkable, but that ICAO said we actually authorize the working group to work hard on this. We also embraced the adoption by EASA of this framework, so that finally we are rid of taking one decision for the coming 5-6 years by aviation authorities, but focus on specific risk categories, which I think is the way forward for the industry. We can have permits to fly for an hour, a week, a month, a certain period, as long as it is specific. And I think that will create the options. And we see African authorities working very hard. We see Europe catching up a little bit, but Africa is far ahead, which is a big compliment. They really want to build infrastructure. So really looking forward. I also have to mention the significant event in Rwanda, where Zipline is working, but also the government is so proactive to see the Prime Minister or even the President opening this whole conference. Yeah, it's African proud. So it's exciting times. And you see on the background, we now have our Wings for 8 mini freighter ready, carrying 160 kg, and then airdropping boxes of 20 kg. So yes, exciting times, and let us build the industry together.
Great. Barry, I totally agree with you on creating a societal need first and then expanding it further towards other deliveries. Now let's just talk about, say, payload range and the speed, from delivering commodities worth, a few kilos to probably 100 kilos to a UAV in future carrying about 100 tons of cargo at a cost which may be, less than half of what uh, air cargo charges at the moment. But at the same time, there are regulatory concerns of fully automated drones and beyond visual line of sight and other such challenges. What is your pitch in terms of competing with traditional air cargo? Jeffrey, I'd like to go with you first, since you've tied up with Wingcopter, for smaller drones to the fly-off, to the drone delivery Canada move. So, what is your pitch in terms of competing or probably complementing with the traditional air cargo?
Thank you so much. And actually, this is one of the most interesting questions I get asked all the time. And on a personal level, and also as a company, we sit at a very interesting intersection, because traditionally we're actually coming from an air cargo side. But we also saw the vision where we needed to align ourselves and our futures to technologies that were aligning with autonomy, with sustainability, reduced cost, and also technologies that could scale to reach most of the people that we could traditionally not reach with a traditional means of air cargo. And having said that, I still at the moment and for the foreseeable few years ahead, I think drones will primarily be for as a complementary solution, less of a replacing. But now with the exciting technologies, for example, the Dronomics drone that is now doing regional and inter-country, and as we progress now towards airship companies coming up, we foresee maybe in 5 years or now even less, where slowly the larger cargo drones will start replacing the freighters, because we have strategic advantages that these type of drones have over traditional means. Where, for example, in Africa, we don't have a lot of infrastructure in terms of airports. And these are the systems that can now be able to connect between not only major cities, but now from major city to a small village, to a school, to a health clinic. And so I think at the moment we're just complementing, but I'm quite excited, as Villain said, the disruption that is about to occur in a few years' time, and already that is leading as to where even our partnership with Flyox and Drone Delivery Canada on the mind-blowing sort of disruption that are going to occur down the line in a few years' time.
Right. Can I get Ed there? Ed, you are out to fly the Regale. What is your pitch for how we could complement it to the traditional air cargo?
I agree with Jeffrey. I think that initially the idea is not to supplant. Really, quite frankly, there's hundreds of thousands of smaller manned aircraft, or even large manned aircraft, or for that matter, even very large cargo aircraft or potential cargo aircraft. For example, the 747 passenger aircraft right now, there are thousands in the boneyards throughout, the storage yards throughout the world. It's very simple. They're very inexpensive. They're easy to convert into freighter for a million or two US. You can add a cargo door and cargo ramps and all the things that are needed to convert them. So that capacity is there. It will be there for a while. The real value comes from being able to deliver cargo that's to locations that are currently not reachable by manned aircraft or even by fixed wing aircraft to bring cargo. Lots of cargo, not more so than just a small package or one or two packages. The profit, we've spoken with many cargo carriage companies, and I'm actually an alumnus of a cargo company as well. Our profit was not made in carrying single packages, but rather made carrying many packages, many pounds or many kilograms of weight. So the idea there is not so much to supplant what is there, it's to augment what is there, to be able to take cargo into difficult locations. And then once that's complete, or once that's you've been able to show that as the fleet gets older, the UAVs out there that are flying unmanned cargo will then begin to take more and more of those roles. But as well, the UAVs that are carrying cargo have the capability of flying in conditions where you wouldn't want to send an aircraft with a human crew into weather that includes icing or very high winds, or foggy conditions, or conditions that are just not habitable, too dangerous to fly into for humans, not so for a drone. So it would be easier then to send it there. So yes, I think that's really the value proposition, that capability of being able to deliver cargo where a fixed wing manned aircraft is not capable of going right now because of the various conditions, or even just because of the difficulty of reaching that one position.
Right. Thanks, Ed. Swillen, as Jeffrey said, and Celine also mentioned, first, let me congratulate you on having unveiled the first 5 airports in the European network of cargo drone ports. Can you explain the kind of scale and momentum that you are looking to achieve with this network?
Sure, definitely. So 35 airports, of which we only unveiled 5. We'll be unveiling the rest throughout the coming months. May seem like a big number, but when you consider that in Europe alone, there's more than 3,000 airports and airfields, it's actually just the very first step. And we specifically designed, so our aircraft, a lot of you are already familiar, but for those that are not, it's a standardized fixed wing vehicle that can carry 350 kilograms at a distance of up to 2,500 kilometers. It's fixed wing, it's not electric. Unfortunately, electric propulsion cannot allow us such a big range yet. And we use a certified engine, so it makes things very simple operationally. We can be hitting the market within the next 12 months. So the important thing there was we chose to focus on the middle mile, so only servicing in order to create a cheap to operate vehicle, we realized we cannot do vertical takeoff, because otherwise we'll be sacrificing, the way that your laptop, is not as powerful as a desktop, which is specialized to do that one job. So we said, let's just specialize into the fixed wing forward flight. Now, that meant we have to let go of all the other business that is last mile, and we need locations. We optimized to have these locations be, the design of our vehicle to be sort of village friendly, so that we can land, on any of the 400 airstrips in Kenya, which the majority of them are unpaved. We can land on grass, on gravel, different surfaces. That's not a problem. But in our model, we see permanent operations. So we've gotten a lot of requests previously from the World Health Organization and others. The airdropping capability that Barry and some others are working on is quite exciting. It's definitely very needed. And we're rooting for that to happen as soon as possible, because these people really need action today, right? Food today. In our case, we chose to focus on the communities that have already sort of made it out of that phase, that do no longer need such day-to-day support, but are trying to, both be connected to the global trade system. With the power of the internet, you could be sitting anywhere in a village. You could be selling to the whole world. It doesn't cost that much. You just need some data connection and, to type in your product. And somebody from New York City could order it. Somebody from, all these much wealthier places could do that. But the challenge is that shipping cost is going to really make you irrelevant to them, to these bigger markets. So I would say that connectivity as a permanent solution is also very important in terms of social value. And that's really the exciting case that we've chosen to focus on. There's a lot of other benefits. People mentioned vaccines and so on. These are some of the other verticals we're looking for. But to be able to provide connectivity, people are largely immovable. So very little mobility that you see. So that means we need to focus on those endpoints and serving those locations in a permanent manner. And that's why these drone ports are key to our strategy.
Okay, excellent, Swillen. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Barry, last year you won TIACA's award for sustainable innovation for your winged boxes. And I believe you are in the testing phase now. When are you looking to start deploying your aircraft for humanitarian missions?
Yeah, thank you, Surya. It'll be in spring this year, probably, or spring next year. And we did some testing, also made possible by the TIACA award that we have won. Very happy with this industry recognition. And let me play around with the screen a little bit, whether that works. But you see our box here. So the award-winning box with on the background the cargo drone. And we went to our friends in Germany at the German Aerospace Institute to see whether we could transport vaccines. It was one of the things that we invested the money in, to see whether we could make a kind of insulation to keep the product okay, because we can already drop it, but now we also wanted to test insulation. So partners from Trip & Co developed this thing. So here you see this is actually a fridge at DLR. And when you open the fridge, there's not vaccines, but there's Jägermeister, which is the small bottles that you can drink. And we thought that appropriate to drop, not to risk any lives that we would fly real vaccines. So we put Jägermeister in the fridge and then loaded it into the box. So this is the box. It's sizable. The box is 40 by 40 by 60 centimeters. It has a crumple zone. So you can see that everything fits nicely. And we have this insulating layer now in it, which is now being tested with the appropriate aircraft standards, so that we have the proper test reports for the authorities. Then we loaded it into our aircraft. This is the optionally piloted aircraft where we have the cargo base under the wings. So 3 boxes per wing. And here, well, it's a little bit from a long distance, but you can see the fixed wing fly, dropping the boxes from 100 meters on a test field of DLR close to Berlin. And the good news is everything intact. So this is Johann Dauer from the German Aerospace Institute, and you can see that everything really works fine. So this box just dropped from 100 meters and is really intact. We do not reuse boxes. It is a single way product, but it works out nicely. And this is the unpacking of the box by our lead engineer Alexi, and the handover of the box. And yes, everything fantastic. So the good thing is that the Jägermeister survived, and now we have a Jägermeister in the office every Friday. We are confident that obviously our prospect customers like UN and Red Cross are more interested in food, as Svilen pointed out. But we can now transport medicines as well, and also under a certain insulating condition. And the point I wanted to make is, following your question, what is now the big proposition? I think it is not a competition per se, since this air cargo industry is so enormously mature. I mean, to organize a pilot out of a big aircraft, okay, it saves a little bit of cost, but it will not make a big difference. I concur with the other speakers that it is a supplement. It is something that we now cannot do. Like Ed pointed out, it is getting somewhere where we now don't get, either with a fixed wing, like Svilen took a strategic decision, so did we, for simplicity and dropping of things. And in the case of Wings for Aid, what we see when we start to do logistic programming, that we can do micro distribution by airdrops. But the good thing is, it is scalable at the same cost. So that's interesting. So for instance, you would have, and I find it a fantastic example, you have refugees. We know refugees maybe from big camps. I mean, big refugee camps. But that is not where the refugee starts. The refugee starts at home in a village and goes out there because of a disaster, man-made or natural, whatever. And the group gets into a certain number, but that group needs to be supplied with stuff. Now that is not always possible because you can do large airdrops but then you need to get the people first together into big groups. Now, can you imagine that we have a world where we can do scalable micro distribution with all the technology that now becomes available? We can actually follow people to where they are and deliver what they need, because we can deliver 100 kg, 1000 kg and stop, nothing else. So I think that the whole rethinking of supply chains, like Ed pointed out and like Sriland pointed out, I mean, economies will flourish because you can indeed connect to the internet. So that is the big word of access for people. It is access for people that want to help and bring things to people, but also access for people to international markets. Not with the Wings for Aid solution, because we only drop. That requires other solutions. Yeah, so I see it as micro distribution, but scalable. And that is only because it is unmanned. If it were manned, yeah, then you start to optimize the aircraft for the pilots. You make it the bigger, the better. Now we don't care. You can optimize on fuel or on fuselage or whatever. And so you have a different aircraft design, which is why we work together with technical universities to really take such decisions. Because you can, from a knowledge perspective, where I think Europe is very strong. I mean, Africa is paving the way, but with a lot of European and American university knowledge, which is a perfect combination. So we rethink the way we build aircraft and we rethink the way we organize logistics. Well, and then from the air cargo industry, why not? And humanitarian first, please. That was always nice. So scalable microdistribution is, I think, really something new that we as an industry can bring to logistics. And then if it is a little bit of a connected world, so the internet brought us, in principle, the freedom to exchange information. If cargo drones can bring us the freedom to exchange goods worldwide, we have a better world. Thank you.
Great, Barry. Jeffrey, let me bring you into the discussion here after hearing from Barry. Astral has been leveraging drones for a range of applications. A few months ago, since even before we mentioned about the Wingcopter, signing up with Wingcopter and Drone Delivery Canada, the letter of intent that has been signed to develop, remotely piloted aerial systems. What synergies are you really looking to leverage with this venture? And also, for now, obviously, this is for humanitarian missions. Will you be considering extending these to last mile e-commerce deliveries as well?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. To start off with the collaborations that we've had with Drone Delivery Canada, I'm actually excited to announce that starting next year, the Q1, we are going to do a pilot project in the western part of the country in Kenya, where we've partnered with one of the largest hospitals in the region. And effectively what we'll be doing is we'll be transporting vaccines as well as other medical and critical items from the hospital to 11 destinations, ranging from about 44 kilometers there, about to 120 kilometers. But one of the interesting aspects of this pilot project will be, apart from just delivering vaccines and these medicines, we'll be picking COVID-19 test swabs and returning them back to the main clinic for analysis. In regards to Wingcopter, later on in the year, we'll be working on an e-commerce project in 3 locations in Kenya. One in the central part of Kenya is mostly the highlands, in a town called Machakos, which is more of a suburban town, and as well as the coastal region. And basically, the approach we are taking now that you asked about e-commerce is one of these growing industries in Kenya. And now due to COVID-19, we've had these huge effects and a lot of livelihoods that were depending on e-commerce. And it's not just the online platforms, it's people who sell things on Instagram and Facebook and all these social media platforms, and mostly are the youth. So we've seen that disruption, but the approach for us, looking at it from an African perspective, we've seen the approach where we won't be able to do door-to-door deliveries using drones. That's out of the picture, at least in the foreseeable future. The only sustainable way we foresee using drones at the moment for e-commerce is mostly connecting towns. And this comes to the point in which Svilen was saying is more connecting between towns to towns, so that in the event you are carrying, let's say, e-commerce products is from, let's say, Nairobi, which is the capital city, carrying them in bulk and delivering them to a nearby town, and then people just collect from there. And I think this is also a point that Ed pointed out. So for Wingcopter, we are starting out with small delivery trials for e-commerce, and this will be in 3 locations, and then we roll it out from there. The final point I'll put on e-commerce is the main problem we are trying to tackle in Africa is, as Barry pointed out, we have a lot of disconnected communities, and through that disconnection brings out the issue of local trade, and well as connecting businesses in remote locations to urban areas. And so where the drones come into play is how we can effectively be able to connect the remote traders and open up those people to other markets outside that, and drones bring out that. The final point on that is that the natural progression we've had of this technology is coming from operations from like a national level, then to a regional level and international level. And we see that we need to really foster also cross-border operations. And as Vilen was saying, this will be an important factor of unlocking the full potential of drones, so that we can also open up trade, not just between towns, but also at a regional level. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Jeffrey. One thing that has been bothering me is like when it comes to assessing the environmental impact of automated drones and UAVs, there are many factors that need consideration, like where they are deployed from and how far they travel, their size of weight and the size and the weight of the package, all of that. So how do you see this as a how do you see this weight on the environment? Do you see that, obviously it's going to be much lesser than for air cargo, the kind of emissions that are there for air cargo. But, when there are many drones flying in the sky, how is it going to really impact the environment? Jeffrey, would you be able to answer that one?
Yes. Yes. So again, looking at how the industry is going, and keeping in mind that also we are like in the very, very early stages of this industry, and what gives me hope in terms of sustainability, especially looking at climate and the environmental impact, is the drone ecosystem and the technology is progressing on so fast and at a very exponential rate. And I'm glad that a lot of manufacturers we've interacted with, a lot of them are progressing towards electric, and they have plans to do that. And because similar to the smartphone industry, where every year it's exponential, the iterations are exponentially better than the previous one. I also foresee a situation where maybe in 5 years' time, regardless of the number of drones that are being made, that is what will be the driving factor for the industry to actually create solutions that drive down, especially on the emissions side. Having said that, on a final point, I think one of the challenges we are facing on how we can best integrate the technology, especially looking towards the developing countries, is that there's still a gap for knowledge transfer, where on the technical side, we are trying to liaise with a lot of manufacturers, where a lot of this knowledge can be transferred, especially looking at Africa and other developing countries, because there's also a lot of bottom-up innovation that can come up from the people who are actually interfacing with the technology. And through that sort of joint effort, I think there's a lot of hope for sustainable drone deliveries using electric propulsion and airships and other technologies that are coming up.
Okay, Ed, can I have your view on that?
Sorry about that. I had myself on mute. But We don't use batteries, and we looked at battery technology. It just isn't there yet, unfortunately. It's because, and also because the batteries take up quite a bit of volume in both weight, or quite a bit of volume, and also weight for cargo. So we've taken a different route. We're actually what they call a TE VTOL, or turbo electric VTOL. So we use turbines to drive those, to drive generators, and then of course the generators produce electric power that power the fans for driving the aircraft, providing thrust for the aircraft. But in saying that, we could not still have an aircraft that was very that put out the same amount of emissions and everything else. We operate not just inexpensively because we operate with less fuel, but we also operate at a fraction of the emissions. So we use 60% less fuel than a standard turboprop aircraft. But we also emit 70% less emissions than a standard turboprop aircraft. And so those together, I think, are, while they're still not there, that I do have to say that the aircraft industry does not. We hear a lot about the things, everything from contrails to how much the emissions are with the aircraft industry, but as a whole, it's only a fraction of any of the CO2 production or any of the emission production. Even several years ago, it's nothing like automobiles or buses or anything of that nature. So aircraft on a per mile basis produce a fraction of what the other ones do. We've gone even further than that. It wasn't enough that we built an aircraft that was literally pennies per ton mile to be able to transport cargo. But in this instance as well, we also had to build an aircraft that was a very environmentally greatly reduces the amount of greenhouse gases that it emitted. So it's something that we're take a lot of pride in. I don't necessarily think that batteries will be a viable option in the near future, but certainly they will. I think the technology gets better. I think we're probably still 10 years away from seeing a viable battery that's in the 4,000 kilowatt per kilogram range, that's usable for specifically for air cargo. But we're getting there. It's just going to take a while. So in the meantime, we have an alternative that will deliver doing very little greenhouse gas emissions.
Right. Thanks, Ed. Philin, would you like to share your views on the environmental impact?
Yeah, I would say the same what Ed's views are. I think it's overestimated what the aviation's contribution is, just because a small part of the population flies on airplanes, even during the pre-COVID times, whereas they use like daily their cars. It's easy for them to blame everything on those big scary machines. But the reality is, with air cargo carrying more than 35% of the world trade in terms of value, it's it's just, we have to do what we can to make it even more sustainable. But just the proportion of harm environmentally is nowhere near what some people are trying to make it look like in the news, right? So in our particular case, was like what Ed's analysis was, we realized, look, we can either stay and hope for a solution to come out of the labs for the next 5 to 10 years, or we can take what's available. And by virtue of also, cargo customers themselves don't like to pay more money than they could. So they need ultimately a very efficient airplane. So the economics and the environmental objectives are aligned. In our case, we ended up, that's why we didn't take an existing airframe and just replace the cabin with an autopilot, but we decided to start from a completely new airframe from scratch, so that we can make sure that every cubic centimeter of it is optimized for one single use, and that's cargo. And traditionally, in 100 years of aviation, it's almost the exception that airplanes would be designed for cargo first. Almost 100% of the time, airplanes were designed for passengers first and then cargo. So they take on a lot of inefficiencies as a result. In our case, when we did some comparisons, we realized that we are up to 70% less emissions than existing aircraft. And that's when you compare moving a unit of cargo over a unit of distance. So total apples to apples comparison. And that's quite an achievement. It's not 100% lower emissions, but we'll get there. And the other thing that a lot of battery proponents are missing seems to be the fact that in a lot of places you don't have reliable grid infrastructure. So the way for you to power your battery after a flight is to pour a fossil fuel into a generator. So you're not really being green by using a battery by default. It also really matters what the context is. Would we look to switch to electric or hydrogen or any other more sustainable power source? Absolutely. But to date, none have been certified. Our engine is certified. We can fly with it tomorrow. So it's, do we ask all these customers to wait until we can be totally fully green? Or do we serve their needs and let them, by accruing that economic value to themselves, then, compound those positive effects themselves? I would choose that, the second, for sure.
Okay. Swillen, and when do we see the black swans up in the sky?
It's the 6-year-old question. You will see me shave hopefully in a few months.
Oh, great.
We're almost complete with the full-scale prototype. So Q1, Q2 would be those first tests. And yeah,
okay,
very much looking forward to that.
All right. And there's a very interesting question from François Bertrand, and it's about how about the reliability of the cargo drone compared to a conventional aircraft of similar capacity in the face of a difficult weather conditions? I think Ed has replied to it, but for all the viewers, if we could hear it from you, Ed.
Certainly. They're very reliable. We use components that are currently certified for the most part, from the turbine engines, which are the Safran Arden 3 engines that are currently being used for helicopters, and even the avionics on board carry an FAA TSO, or typically the same certification through EASA. So we must meet very stringent, both through EASA and FAA certification standards. And this also includes, well, our certification standard is part 23, both in EASA and the FAA. So we meet the same certification standards as all the other passenger aircraft do, even though we're not carrying any other passengers. And so the reliability has to be there as well. Even the manufacturing has to be done on using exactly the same standards that you would for a standard aircraft. They must be conformed. The ability for our aircraft, that was the other thing too, is it isn't enough that we were able to fly where a fixed wing aircraft is, a manned fixed wing aircraft, but we should be able then to also fly into locations where the weather and everything else would make it difficult for a manned aircraft. So we build in extra de-icing systems. We also build in extra systems in the detect and avoid system to prevent, to allow the aircraft to fly in conditions where you typically would not be able to, or you typically would not send a manned crew. So it's the reliability has to be there. The structures have to be able to be withstand, especially in cargo operations, they have to be able to withstand fairly repetitive and heavy use. So the reliability is there. We do meet all the same standards. We're not seeking any kind of certification that requires special conditions or special waivers or anything else. We've been working with the FAA and with the EASA going back to 2016. So now for 4 years, we've had a very good relationship with both, and we know exactly how it's going to be certificated using known standards and using known reliability and also quality standards that are demanded by those organizations.
Right. Barry, would like to know from you about the reliability of cargo drones compared to conventional aircraft, especially in the face of difficult weather conditions.
Yes. Well, obviously, I think that's like the previous speaker said, we build them according to the same standards.
Okay. Okay.
So in principle, it doesn't matter. But then, as Dylan pointed out earlier, we optimize them for specific use.
All right.
So you get a whole new bunch of aircraft that is specific for use. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember an incident with a helicopter in Nepal, where a helicopter was bringing relief stuff and dropped from the sky. Now, then you have pilots on board and they die, which is a nuisance, at least. So now, at least if we are careful with the operating volumes that we fly in, and I think for the moment, realistically, we will all have the like SORA approach where we have our pathway and measures and so on. Then, we just avoid any air and ground risk and mitigate it. So in terms of safety, and we don't need to think about the pilot because the pilot is having a cheese sandwich either with an espresso or whatever. So that's taken care of. That one is in the loop but safe. Then you have the aircraft. Given that we think in, it's big words, but UTM and integration and what have you, that at least we think in terms of corridors, then we can realistically organize air safety and mitigate air risk. And then you are left with the ground. And if on the ground we take good care of our routes and focus on community engagement, what is going on and where they are, that all, at all the crossings, at all the farmers and so on, we engage community in what is going on. And I'm still discussing the early stage of industry. If this is becoming all very mature and we get into the military grade, who cares? Then it is aircraft for aircraft. Right. But for now, I think even with adverse weather conditions, all aircraft will be built that they will have parachute systems or whatever system so that they just drop down within the safe area. So I think overall, everything is favorable. Safety will increase because we apply the same standards as for manned aviation while the pilot is on the ground. Fantastic. So if we all work hard and work according to standards, I see safety increase. And that is exactly the dialogue we now have every day with aviation authorities. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. I'd like to come with a final question to Ed. Ed, you come with an air cargo background, being a pilot yourself. In the current era of unmanned aerial vehicles, what is your message to the budding drone pilots?
Our aircraft, by requirement, by regulation requirement, it has to be controlled. The aircraft itself is semi-autonomous, so the operator on the ground presses a button and it takes off, presses a button. So there's no wheel, there's no rudder pedals, there's no throttle. But it still doesn't mean that the operator is not familiar with flying an aircraft. They have to know how to do things like set up an instrument approach, the places they can and can't go, following orders from air traffic control, those kinds of things. So it really requires a pilot to do that. And for us, the requirement is a pilot with a commercial pilot's license and an instrument endorsement. So it takes a while to get there. In the United States, typically about 250 hours of pilot time to be able to, and then of course the exams and everything else go with it. So there's still a lot of opportunity. The FAA has also said that they will allow our pilots to be able to log that time. And so they can build up time towards an air transport pilot rating or any of those things based on that. So there's still a lot of opportunity. There will always be manned aircraft or aircraft, especially to carry passengers. But the way to get there, especially, it's ideal right now, especially with COVID, because you can be in an airtight compartment that, where you can fly the aircraft and do everything else and still be able to practice your craft, so to speak. So the opportunities are there. As a pilot myself, when I first got involved with drones over 20 years ago with Northrop Grumman, the thought was that I was almost being a traitor to my craft because of the fact that I was going to be flying drones. But in reality, I found it very rewarding. I found that it was very a much different environment, even though I was sitting on the ground, but it was a much different environment. But it still allowed me to do a lot of things that I typically would do normally. So it is wide open, and that will be there for a while. I think that as the bigger drones get, the more they'll require the need for operators who are licensed pilots to be able to do that, especially when you're talking our size, you know, the 2 to 5 ton cargo capability. They will still require an operator that knows what the flight path of that aircraft is and is able to take commands from air traffic control to move the to change the flight path of the aircraft.
Right. All right, Ed, I think we have just a couple of minutes left. So before we end, I'd like final words from each of you. Let's start with Jeffrey.
Okay, so for me, I think the bottom line is that I'm actually excited about this industry, and I'm super excited that I'm in this space at this time. I think with COVID, we've been thrust into this world of contactless interactions, where autonomous technologies really is now what is going to come and solve a lot of these problems, where you can transport goods without, still following the guidelines for people not interacting. And I think even beyond COVID, I'm quite positive that the drones will be here to stay, and they are going to be impactful across all industries, from agriculture to e-commerce and other sectors that depend on air cargo. And I'm really excited about the projects that we'll be doing in Kenya with Drone Delivery Canada, transporting medication and vaccines across the western part. And yeah, so I really look forward. And I think now my final word is that for all of us acting in this space, from manufacturers to operators and other integrators, the ball is in our court, where we need to take this technology and scale it to match even the scaling problems we have of COVID and other issues, so that we can reach, especially looking at COVID, we can reach every man, woman, and child across all regions, regardless of their geographical locations, regardless of where they are. And I think it's only drones that can do this, even for things like same-day deliveries in Kenya, can only be possible using this tech. And I'm super excited to be part of it, and super excited to be part of the change going forward. Thank you.
Totally agree with you there, Jeffrey. Let me hear from Swilin then.
Yeah, really excited to be part of that change as well. So when we started Dronamics, we were on a mission to do same-day delivery possible for everyone, everywhere, at a cost that anyone can afford. And that's remained. That's one of the reasons why we were okay to grow these beards for 6 years until we have the aircraft purposely built. What a lot of people don't realize, I believe, and I mean, people in consumers and so on, they tend to undervalue their time. And the reality is that if something takes me a day, but it takes you 2 days, like getting a delivery to a customer or receiving a delivery from a vendor, you don't get that extra day back in increased life expectancy, right? So it's a very, especially when we talk about underserved regions, underserved routes, it's on us. If we have that ability and that technology within reach, it's not so much an opportunity as it is a duty to deploy it and to make sure that we draw these supply chains in a way that are much more equitable and give access to every person everywhere. So we really believe same-day shipping should be essentially a human right. So thank you.
All right. All right. Can I get Barry there? Barry, are you there? I think we've lost. Okay. Can I go to Ed then with your final words?
Sure. By the way, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here, Surya. And Svetlana, it was good to see you again. I hadn't seen you in a while. Um, we usually run into each other at conferences, but none this year. So, and then of course, Celine, it was an honor to meet you. Thank you for your opening remarks. And Jeffrey, certainly much luck to you. To the people out there, I think you're seeing the rise of drone, especially drone air cargo, happening quicker and quicker every day. I think you'll see it'll become much more ubiquitous. You'll also be able to see a lot of your cargo in the future delivered via air cargo, or I should say delivered via drone. Not so much last mile, but I think you're going to see a lot of the cargo being delivered. The bulk cargo that you'll see going back and forth will be via drone, and it's just the natural progression. So we're very happy to be a part of this. This is something that we spent literally thousands of hours trying to figure out what is the best niche, what is the best market to be in, and I think we found that. And so the sky is wide open. We see that validated almost every day. There are companies. I think now Pipistrel is getting into the business after originally being a UAM and Uber Air company. They've switched over to being cargo. They dropped Uber Air, and several others have as well, now saying that they're looking at converting from being a UAM company to a cargo company. So the real promise, and I say that to investors and just the people that we speak to on a daily basis, that you can track air cargo over 100 years, you can track the market over 100 years, but no one has any idea what the UAM market's going to be like. And we see that as getting better and better and better every year. So anyway, thank you again. Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure being here, and I look forward to many more.
Exciting times ahead. Thank you, Swillen, Jeffrey, and Ed, and Barry. I think we've lost Barry's connection here. Thank you so much. Let me call upon Celine now to make her concluding remarks.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I don't know if my sound is okay. So very quickly, thank you, everyone. I think we have a clear opportunity to convince the traditional air cargo industry, convince the traditional airlines, the airports, etc., to open their minds towards the opportunities that unmanned aviation are bringing to their own business. You have an opportunity also with this COVID crisis to really showcase what you can bring. And we talked about the societal value, the human rights are due to get delivered quickly for essential goods, and not just essential goods, by the way, everywhere in the world. So I think this message is really important to drive across the entire aviation community, and I really encourage the drones manufacturers and operators to also join TIACA, so that this dialogue conversation can happen also within the association. So having said that, I wish you all a great day, and I'm also reminding you that we have the last session of the Air Cargo Forum tomorrow. It's called Uniting Air Cargo, and we need to be united as an industry to drive further transformation. It includes the adoption of innovation, the digital transformation, sustainability, but also the successful transport of COVID vaccines in the world, the safe and security issues. All those like common topics need to have a united industry. We will also announce the winners of the second Sustainability Awards. And in the startup category, we have actually 2 drones companies. So I really encourage you also to not miss that. So we have 2 chances out of 3 to have another drone company winning the Sustainability Award. So I'm just leaving that with you. and say talk to you soon, and see you tomorrow at Uniting Air Cargo webinar. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You.